Maneva na sema PENDREAM TV. PENDREAM TV de osia dem yopo.
Mema obi biara kwaba eba PENDREAM TV. Say we are new to the channel, subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell no so. Like Jumadi no na share ma afofron so ensa and Kevin. We are not preaching for coup and we will never preach for coup. Name say who say obi abodre share. No one taking measures also won't fall into that same situation. There is a saying say no army can stop an idea whose time has come. Kwesi Pratt Jr. had a deep analysis into coup Gabon and I feel so the happenings of coup in Africa and I say West Africa now or the ensemble atoja and I saw the warning. Now we a warning to Ghana, a warning to Africa, a warning to West Africa, and a warning to ECOWAS. Me pesa obekam hone yakotie ensema Kwesi Pratt edituja ewo Pan African TV. Na answer na bekono subscribe to channel na click notification bell no so like Jumadi no da share ma afofron so ensa enkabi. Yetie se na Kwesi Pratt Jr.
Discussing what has happened in the Central African country of Gabon. Remember, started in West Africa. It looks like it's spreading to other parts of Africa. Responses from people. Ali Bongo has been in power for over a decade. His father before him for over 40 years. So they've been in power collectively for a long time. And for the first time, at least, that family has been overthrown. Comment, Kwesi Pratt.
Well, first of all, I think that it is not a surprise that a coup occurred in Gabon. Nobody was surprised by the coup. And nobody was surprised by the coup because all the factors which make coups possible existed in Gabon. Now, there are many people who have also tended to think that the coup in Gabon is like the coup in Burkina Faso and the coup in Niger. It's not true. All of these coups have different motive forces. And I would come to show that much later. I think it's important, first and foremost, to see the kind of government which was overthrown. You understand? And I'm in agreement with my brother and friend Pierre Dankwa. His analysis is on point and so on. But there are other ingredients that we need to factor. First and foremost, you had a president whose origin was in doubt, substantial doubt about his origin. There are those who believe that he actually is an adopted son of the former president, and that he's one of 8 children who was adopted by his so-called father, who were refugees from the Biafran Civil War. That's one story.
Wow.
Now, the other story is that he was actually born in the Congo to a mother who was a musician, a popular musician, who married his father, who was the president, and so on. Now, the significant thing is that this guy, who eventually became president, did not speak any indigenous Gabonese language.
Oh, wow.
He was a total stranger. He did not go to school in Gabon. From his early ages, he spent most of his time in elite schools in Paris. And there's even a story that he became so French that actually he imported snow, filled his house with imported snow, so that his Christmas will look like Christmas in Paris, and so on. So this is a completely alienated figure. Now, I've been looking at how he rose to power. And it's interesting that at a certain time, he was a punk artist. You understand? He was a musician. popular vocalist singing punk and so on. In fact, his first album was actually produced by the producer of James Brown. That should give you an idea of the guy who eventually became president. James Brown's producer produced the first album of Ali Bongo. So that's interesting. Now there's another aspect of his life that has not been highlighted much. He, like his father, was Christian. But they decided to change their religion because they thought that the change of their religion could bring investments from the Far East, especially Saudi Arabia. So this is the extent to which they are committed to principle. Even when it comes to matters of faith, they pay with it for money. You understand? Christians who converted to Islam because they were smelling money. Okay. Now, together, father and son, if we assume that the story about his father and so on are true, father and son ruled Gabon for 56 years. Two of them. Between them, 56 years. Now that's a dynasty. These were emperors. They were not presidents. They were emperors. Okay? Now, what is significant is also the news that the guy who has just become president, the coup leader, is a cousin to Ali. So for those who think that they are moving away from the family, it is not Uhuru yet. The family is still there. But there's something interesting still. This new guy was actually, he came from the elite unit of the armed forces with special responsibility for the protection of the president, his cousin. He thought that his cousin was the best place to protect him and made his cousin head of the elite unit, which has now toppled his administration. Important lessons there, okay? Now, in the 60s, there were many coups around the world. And the analysis then was that these coups were coming about as a result of the Cold War. Okay? So the Soviet bloc would make a coup in order to ensure that their interests were catered for and so on. And also, the NATO bloc or the Western Alliance also instigated many coups. Now, I find it most interesting that today, countries which taught us how to make coup d'etats, countries which use coup d'etats as instruments of foreign policy, and who still continue to use coup d'etats as instruments of foreign policy, you know, are condemning coup d'etats and urging us to toe the democratic path. When CIA officials and Kotoka and Major Kwesi and A.K. Deku were meeting at the 37 Military Hospital in Accra to plot the coup against Kwame Nkrumah, were they minded by any democratic credentials or something? They were not. It was pursuit of U.S. interest. France, the United States of America, Belgium, and others actively participated in the plot to overthrow Patrice Lumumba of the Congo. And Patrice Lumumba was not just overthrown, they actually executed him and dissolved his body in acid and removed his front teeth, which they still keep as a souvenir. And these are the people who are sermonizing about democracy. Look at them. These are the people sermonizing about democracy. These are the same forces which overthrew Salvador Allende in Chile, and they killed him. The list of coups d'etats that these forces have plotted and executed around the world is very, very tall. And I think we as Africans should not be taking moral lessons from the brutal that the West is. That's not what we should be taking our moral lessons from. You understand? But I'm saying that the coup d'etats that are occurring now are not accentuated by Cold War interests. They're so completely different. So these are not ordinary coup d'etats. Now, one, in our struggle for national independence, there were three clear objectives. One of the objectives was that we should have the power to choose our own leaders, because we didn't have that power.
Yeah.
And again, it's important to recognize that those who colonized us denied us the right to choose our own leaders democratically. The governor was sitting in the Christianborg Castle. Who did he represent in the Gold Coast? Arbitrarily imposed by the Queen of England. You understand? And they did this for centuries. They have no right to be talking democracy to us. We know democracy better than them. Their history is full of the arbitrary imposition of leaders, the denial of the rights of the colonized people, and so on. So our struggle for national independence was intended, one, for us to regain our right as a people to choose our own leaders. Two, our struggle for national independence was to enable us own our resources. The gold, the diamond, the oil, the gas, and so on, embedded in our soil. That we should own it. And three, that these resources, when exploited, should be exploited for the benefit of our own people. Three objectives. Now, it is clear that we have not realized these objectives. All three of the objectives have not been realized in Africa today. So, the struggle for national independence continues unabated. And these coups can be seen within the context of the continuing struggle for the emancipation of the African people. And that's why they are popular. They are as popular as the national liberation movements were. This is the reason. Now, you take Niger, and I've seen two different projections. One of them says that Niger is the second poorest country in the world. The other says that Niger is the fourth poorest country in the world. Second, fourth. What difference does it make? You understand? Now, I ask myself, how come that Niger is so very poor? Because this is the country which has enormous uranium resources. It has gold, it has oil, it has gas. And as I said last week, if you go to France and you see all those neon lights, electric lights, and so on, 1 out of every 3 bulbs is powered by uranium from Niger. And yet, less than 30% of the population of Niger has access to electricity. Can you believe this? Look, Niger is the second largest drone base of the United States of America in the world. The whole world, second largest drone base. And yet its people are so poor, their access to education is limited, Their access to social services like housing and so on, limited and so on. Poor people. So the people of Niger, like people throughout Africa, including Ghana, are asking questions about how come that they are so poor, when indeed Africa is the richest continent in the world. And recently, our government was telling us some cock and bull stories about how the US-Ukraine war is responsible for all the problems that confront us and so on. And they are timid enough to tell us that even the food shortages and so on in Africa is a result of this Ukraine-Russian war. My brother, the statistics indicate that Africa alone has more than 40% of the arable land in the world. And I've reduced the percentage. Africa alone, arable land in the world, we have more than 40%. Now, if you have more than 40% of the arable land in the world, and we are dependent on Ukraine for grain supply, for food supply, then the problem is not Ukraine, the problem is us and our leaders and the foolish policies we have pursued since independence. Now, Sana, all these French-speaking African countries, they keep their foreign reserves in the central bank of France. So when France needs money to develop, they just dip their hands in African money and use it for their development. When the African countries need their own money for development, they have to go and beg France. And it is given to them as loans, their own money as loans. And they have to pay interest on their own money that they have borrowed in order to be able to undertake development projects and so on. This situation cannot continue forever. It has to stop somewhere. Unfortunately, Africa doesn't have the leaders who are ready to say no to France, to say no to the European Union, and to say no to NATO. That's why we are here. That's why we are here. That is why the resistance is building. And these coups are expressions of the people's struggle, the resistance. Now, Senator, soldiers, they are people too. They are human beings. Soldiers, they are human beings. Bad governance affects them as much as they affect the civilian population. There are some governments who have come to the erroneous conclusion that soldiers can be bribed. So,
Mr. Pratt was on the floor. I begged him to hold his thoughts, and I will be still able to go because one of those who doesn't speak to anything. I'm Kwesi.
Well, as I was saying, these coup d'etats reflect the struggles for the realization of the aspirations of people in the countries where the coup d'etats are occurring. And that explains the popular base that these coup d'etats have. And I think that that popular base should not be taken for granted. Because right now, we are dealing with popular coup regimes. And any attempt to subvert them are likely to be seen as attempt to subvert the popular will. And the excuse of restoring democracy is childish. What is democracy? Democracy is governance based on the popular will, in the interest of the population. That's what democracy is. Democracy is not about every 4 years going to put a piece of paper in a ballot box. If democracy were like that, it would be so easy. You understand? And I've heard some public commentators, and they make me laugh. They say that, oh, a worse civilian administration is better than the best military administration. Where did they hear that from? Where is it coming from? That useless statement is not borne out by history. It's not borne out by fact. It's not borne out by anything. It's lazy analysis. Why? Adolf Hitler, was he a coup leader? Adolf Hitler, did he stage a coup? Adolf Hitler came to power through elections.
Yes.
Popular vote brought Adolf Hitler to power. Who can tell me that Adolf Hitler's administration is better than the best military government? How can you be making such silly statements? Those who engage in public commentary must understand clearly that what they have is a privileged opportunity. And when you have privileged opportunity, you have to weigh what you say. Look for empirical evidence to back what you say. You don't just talk by heart. Too many people are talking by heart about these coup d'etats. But you see, I was talking about what could count as differences in the different coup regimes that we are getting.
Yeah.
Now, if you take countries in the Sahel, one of the major factors is Islamic insurgency.
Yeah.
The fact that the French and the West could not help them overcome the threat of insecurity, Islamic insurgency. Indeed, at the time that the coup occurred in Burkina Faso, the first coup occurred in Burkina Faso, close to 60% of the land territory of Burkina Faso was occupied by insurgents. And that was a major factor.
Yeah.
It's a major factor in Niger, it was a major factor in Mali, and it was a major factor in Guinea. Don't forget that these four countries also face the threat from the Azawad liberation movement, which had its origins from the collapse of the Libyan administration and so on. Gabon does not have these factors.
Yeah.
Gabon does not have these factors. And it's important for us to understand that very clearly. For Gabon, the immediate push was the alleged rigging of elections. That was the immediate push. Now, I've seen many analyses of the Gabonese situation, and one of them is interesting. And I state it now, not because I believe in it, but because it's possible. Okay? And that is this. Everybody knew that Gabon was going to collapse. Everybody knew that there was going to be a coup in Gabon. So everybody was interested in who will stake the coup. And the French, knowing the reverses they've suffered in especially Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, would have been looking at the situation with bated breath. And it would not be out of reality if the French helped to stake this coup. Especially given who the leader of the coup is.
Yeah.
But this is speculative. Okay? This is speculative. Now, the African Union has condemned the coup in Gabon and is threatening to impose sanctions. But the question we need to ask is that, what is that African Union? African Union is not a union of the peoples of Africa. The African Union is a club of presidents, heads of states of Africa. So, what do they protect? What do they stand for? The interests of heads of states. And one of those interests is that you look after my back and I look after your back. They protect themselves. Yeah. The African Union has no legitimacy in Africa. So is ECOWAS. ECOWAS is a club of heads of states. It has no roots in the people. And that is why they are making decisions which the people reject. ECOWAS sent its leaders to Mali to go and persuade the Malians to hand over. They were met right from the airport by a multitude of hundreds of thousands of ordinary people telling them to go to hell. Okay? So the difference between the leaders and the people of West Africa has become very, very clear.
Yeah.
You understand? Very, very clear. So very clear. Now, these coup d'etats, as I said from the beginning, are not new. They have happened in our history and so on. They happen, they are popular, people rally around them. Eventually, whether it takes 10 years or 19 years, they hand over to so-called civilian administrations. The civilian administrations take over, and over time, they begin to do the very things for which other civilian administrations were overthrown. So we've had a cycle of coup d'etat, civilian administration, coup d'etat, civilian administration, coup d'etat. We need to break this cycle.
Yeah.
Revolutionary forces on the continent, progressive forces on the continent, should be thinking about what is it that we can do in order to transform these popular coup d'etats into popular democratic mass expressions of the people.
Yeah.
Popular, democratic mass expressions of the people. Otherwise, these coup d'etats will happen. We will come back to square one because they'll be compelled to hand over power to civilian administrations, which will stay in power 2, 3 years, sometimes 5 years, sometimes 20 years, and end up messing with us. And we'll have the need then to organize more coup d'etats, and then back to civilian administrations and more coup d'etats. That cycle is not in the interest of the African people. That cycle is certainly not in the interest of the African people. So, the task before us, the question we have to answer is what is it that we need to do in order to turn these popular revolts into mass democratic expressions of the people. That's the challenge. What models are we going to use? In today's world, what models are we going to use? Are we going to use the discredited Westminster model? It doesn't solve our problem. It doesn't solve the problems in Europe. It doesn't solve the problems anywhere else. There's no Soviet model now. In fact, Russia today is not a socialist state. Russia today is a nationalist state, pursuing the agenda of bringing down the unipolar order and establishing a multipolar order. That's something that I can support. But it is not socialist. It is not popular. It is not mass democratic, and so on. So what is it that we need to do in order to realize the ambitions of the 5th Pan-African Congress, which was expressed in its Manchester Resolution in 1945? Go and read that resolution. It set forth the path very clear. And that path was replicated in the 7-year development plan of Osadifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. I think that is where we have to go. The transformation of these coup regimes into something healthy. Look, I think I'm getting to the stage where my interest is no longer in just who wins an election. Because it's not taking us very far. You understand? Same nonsense, same childishness, same lack of focus on the essential things that concern us. We've come to the point in history where those who want to be leaders ought to be thinkers. Thinkers. And when I talk about thinkers, I'm not talking about Harvard-educated professors. That's not what I'm talking about. When I talk about thinkers, I'm talking about real thinkers. People with the power to dream, to imagine. People who can take apart the system we have today, see what is wrong with it and what needs to be fixed and so on. That is not an academic exercise. That takes a certain commitment to political constituencies. And so that's what I'm looking at. You know, I don't know whether what I'm going to say is prejudicial, but if it is, I apologize profusely, because that's not what I want to do. I have no intention of prejudicing Parliament. No, that is not my objective. But I've been watching some developments in this bipartisan committee which was set up by Parliament to investigate the so-called leak tape. And I'm sitting here and I'm just wondering, what did we do wrong? We all, what did we do wrong to arrive at a situation where somebody who finds nothing wrong with political partisanship and the use of state institutions to achieve political partisanship interest and so on, rose to become Deputy Inspector General of Police? What happened? What did we do wrong? That you have people who rise to the apex of the police service and who think it's all right, okay, to pursue narrow political interest to the extent of carrying out willful subversion of the people's right to choose leaders. Willful subversion of the constitutional order. Something is fundamentally wrong with the system we are running today. And it is wrong in two directions. Something is wrong with the system, and something is wrong with the practice. Fundamental. Some things are fundamentally wrong with our society. And unless we wake up, we'll be heading towards the abyss. Some would say Armageddon. I don't want to be a prophet of doom, but it does appear that Armageddon is in sight. I've already said that I'm expecting a few more coups in Africa. And I mean it. From the way things are happening, it is easy to predict that there will be a few more coups in Africa. There are some who think that they are Tarzan. Some of the politicians, they think that they are Tarzan. And I hear them and I laugh at them. And they are beating their chest. We don't want coups. We will not allow coups. Who are you? Who are you? What army have you raised? What is your capacity? No capacity, just empty talk. The way to prevent a descent into chaos, the way to halt the spread of coup d'etats and so on, is for all of us to think collectively and to build systems of governance which respond to the real needs and aspirations of our people. Otherwise, we should forget it. We will be in chaos forever. I'm finished.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Deputy National Women Organizer for the NDC, and also at the SMB Atuja. Our treasure, Sawushe Coup, Ahodo esi ewa West Africa hana, anakusa near Emma Coup esi ewa other African countries na. Sa recipes are ekosono, e be profound, and I say there are some happening in Ghana. E which is Sicilia dapa. Nensema ebetoja ewa social media no. Na wacheche ensemu nientia odka sa ensem no. Mepesa obeka mehoni yakotie ensema eye communications and I said Deputy National Women Organizer eka.
Tega is a Deputy National Women Organizer of the National Democratic Congress. And sitting right beside her is Malik Basim Tale, who is also a Deputy National Communications Officer of the National Democratic Congress. Jifa.
morning, and good morning to my fellow panelists and your cherished viewers. The issue of Gabon's coup d'etat is a little bit interesting, but because, or should I say unfortunately, because a number of coups have happened before this one happened, including the Mali, Niger, and then Burkina Faso coup, everybody assumes that it should be from one angle, or it might be from one angle. Unfortunately, this Gabon issue is very different from what happened in Niger. Their reasons for putting together the coup is very different from the Nigerian issue. Of course, Niger's issue has been happening. It's one of the most unstable countries in Africa because of the frequency of coups that they usually do. But it is majorly because of French influence and how it is rather degrading their economic state as a country. And so their fight is not just with the person in power, or should I say the current president who was ousted, but also majorly with the French influence. That is why today they are still having a lot of issues with even the French ambassador to Niger. Now with Gabon, it is mainly because a family has decided to treat a democratic country as a monarchy. That has been the primary issue in Gabon. And so the kind of joy that some of us have seen on the news or on TV from the citizens is a little bit overwhelming, because you realize that a lot of times when a coup has taken place, people are basically in fear, hiding, don't know what is going to happen next, in fear for their lives and everything. But Gabon is different. People on the street jubilating. The army officers are praising their junta. Of course, they'll praise him, but they're elevating him. That was, I think, General Ngweme or something like that. So you realize that this is a clear issue of a family, one family deciding to treat the country as a monarchy. A country with less than 3 million population, just about 2.5 million. That is very little. In Ghana, we say we are over 30 million and we are little. So you can imagine a country with just 2.5 over, with a lot of oil reserves, one of the biggest in Africa. That has nothing to show for it. Only for a group sitting there, that is the Bongo family, deciding to run it how they want. I was telling a friend this morning that people who are 50 years now were born with that family, with the late Bongo, seated as a president. That is how bad it is. And a 50-year-old man can give birth to a 30-year-old child or daughter. So that is how bad, from 50 years and over, more than half a century, one family has been seated. And even the opposition has nothing to do about it, because this is supposed to be a democratic country. So we are supposed to vote. And the opposition has no power anywhere to come and counter this government. And so the only way that it could have happened, and we all saw it coming, that there should have been a coup, or there will be a coup very soon. And that is what the General Ngwama did. And apparently he is even related to the Bongo family. His mother's side is related to the Bongo family. Somebody who was the right-hand man of the late presidents of Gabon. He was there, and then they split, and then he had to leave and then recalled. So it had to be from within for somebody to take action. And so somebody like that will be a hero. Now my pain comes to these associations or authorities that we have, like ECOWAS and African Union. That is where my pain comes from. Because everyone knows that ECOWAS is doing a flopped job with Niger and the other countries. They have nothing to do. It's just about threatening the coup plotters. And human beings are human beings. People don't just get out. I mean, it's just a few people who react to things that have not, without trigger. But unfortunately, ECOWAS and AU in this matter, because Gabon happens to be within AU and not ECOWAS. AU, for that matter, acts as though, let's wait, let's sit down and let the problem happen before we act. Whilst the original idea is to be able to seal problems from happening, to be able to solve problems before they even escalate. What was AU doing when Bongo and his children were staying in power for over 40 years? His child took over after his father's death. and he was attempting the third term, what was AU doing? All I've heard from them now is that they have decided to cut out Gabon from all the activities until power is restored to the right. Is that what the country is called in for? Unfortunately, we have failed. So all these coups that are happening, I would firstly blame the ECOWAS and the AU for poor jobs being done, for not knowing what their mandate and their job is even supposed to be. All they know is that they gather. I mean, when the Niger coup happened, they would gather in the country. You know how our people are. Come in their expensive lifestyle, come and sit down, have a meeting, and say nothing. And say absolutely nothing. This is where my problem is coming from. Now, I would push forward to say that you look at both sides of every story, the positive and the negative side. It's unfortunate that Africa is advertising ourselves yet again to the world, for the world to know that we are so not independent, we are confused, we are just not in charge of our own situation. But 4 coups in just this year is sending strong warnings and signals to the sitting governments of individual countries. Strong warnings and signals. When Niger happened, Ali Bongo didn't know. Sometimes it's just a matter of somebody being drunk in power. Because when Niger happened, I don't know what Ali Bongo was thinking. If you even watch the video that he brought out, it was a little funny. I mean, people were laughing, people have made funny videos out of it. But for a president who has lived as a son of a president for over 40 years and has lived himself for more than 14 years for more than 10 years or 2 terms as president, sits and all he can say in a video is for people to make noise. To me, it exhibits how shallow and empty he is. You have been given 1 minute to talk as a president because you are in distress and you are saying people should make noise. It tells me how empty and shallow he is, because you can realize that he's so used to just being idolized and being the man or the center of attraction at anything. So he assumes that whatever he opens his mouth to say, there are people outside of his home who are just ready to do it. This is a president who wanted to go for the 3rd term. This strong signal should go to every political leader in every country, for them to know that they say okwasianity and agregu, and that is what is happening in various countries. So everything is changing. And so whoever is planning, some of these ones, I know that countries like Cameroon, you know, they are steadily standing by watching to see what they are supposed to do. Countries like that's Paul, and then you get Makisa also there watching keenly. But I'm just hoping that instead of them waiting like Ali Bongo waited for the issue to escalate, they should rather start solving problems and get out of power if the people don't want you. Because we are so used to rigging elections, and that is exactly what happened in Gabon. It was a rigged election. It had been, the elections had been rigged from time to time. They were so used to it. So they had it. And if the people feel that their message is not being passed across, this is what they will do. It should be an example to the leaders in Ghana here, that at every point in time, people go and vote and their voice is not being communicated. Then they realize that going through the normal way, going through court, no, you have to advise yourself. Panelists are always careful with how we say these things. I'm being very careful with my words. But a word to the whites is enough. That is what people think can happen again. For a while, coups had stopped for a while. I mean, after our colonial masters left us, coups had stopped for a while. Until now, people are realizing that that is the only solution, because greed is taking over Africa once again. And so we take 2 steps forward and we take 3 steps backwards. I am really, really hoping that the Gabon situation will serve a very nice example to some of our people. The part that really caught my attention, because I'll try to relate things to Ghana. I'm not a Nigerian. I'm not a Gabonese. I am not an Egyptian. I am a Ghanaian. So whatever happens, if I want to learn any lesson from it, I'm going to relate it to my country. It's when they found millions of dollars and, cash in the president's house. Apparently it belonged to his son, who has also been arrested and charged for high treason. And then I realized that these are very similar indications of a broken economy living under a terrible leadership. Because we've seen something like that with Cecilia Dapa. Recently, sanitation minister, people call it Bola minister, not to insult the person, but sanitation minister, having millions of dollars and other currencies in her house. Similar thing has happened in Gabon. We do not know what is in the bedrooms and other houses of some of the, very popular ministers or appointees in government. So it tells you that if a coup has been plotted, successfully plotted in Gabon, the things that we have not seen right now are indications of a very distressed economy, extremely distressed economy. We are having lots of monies being packed in people's house because there are issues of money laundering. People have money, they cannot take it to the bank. The bank is going to question you, the bank is going to probe you, and so you have money you cannot spend, looted money. And because nobody knows about it, it is hidden until you are caught. And I can tell you on authority, without having to release any evidence here, that it is happening in several other homes. Cecilia Dapa was just unlucky. And people keep saying outside there that if you ask yourself, common sanitation, that is how they put it, common sanitation minister had this amount of money in her room. What about finance minister? Lands and resources? What about energy minister? What do you think they will have in their rooms and their houses? How much money can you try to, phantom would be in their custody as individuals? We have seen what has happened with the Gabon president. And you relate it, and you have so many similar indications of a broken economy, the same thing happening in Ghana. I mentioned the issue of the election results. He was confident that he was going to win because he will rig it. He has the EC in his pockets. He's going to rig it. And then eventually...
He was actually declared winner about an hour before the court.
Yes. He was declared winner. He had rigged the election. He has the EC. If you ask, I had a friend in Gabon, so I got the opportunity to, ask some of the funny things that had gone on there. And they were like, the coup plotters knew that he was going to be declared winner. Because they had done it since time immemorial. You cannot tell me that people were voting for the late president over and over and over again without any sort of machinations being done for him. Same with his son. So the confidence was there. They are in charge of the country. It's as simple as that. So they knew that was going to be the outcome, Senna. It is similar to what has been happening in Ghana. We have electoral commissioners who are so pro-NPP. We have not even seen some before. And they are not even shy. They do not even have the courtesy to hide their affiliation. We have people who are still being appointed. There was one recently, Malik will have to help me later to remember the name. The recent ones that were appointed, there was one pro-NPP guy who had even held executive positions before in the party. The government doesn't give a hoot. Dr. What? Thank you. Apiahine. Bossman Asari is a typical example of somebody who is pro-NPP. Madame Jean Mensa herself has been seen associating herself before and during her appointment with only NPP people. She has the courtesy to sometimes hide it. But everyone knows, a child of today knows. And so the confidence that NPP has in the EC, they don't even have that confidence in God. The confidence that NPP has in the EC, they don't have that in God. They have taken that away and also secured their position in whatever happens in the Supreme Court. And so at the end of the day, you talk, go to court. They will rig elections right from day one at the polling station up to when elections is declared. I am stating these as examples of things that happen in other countries that are suffering from coups right now. For us to understand that when you block all entrances for a normal citizen, they begin to think out of the box. You block all entrance. When Malik was talking, he was talking about our ability to express yourself, to feel free to, express your grievances. You have to let it out. Unfortunately, this is what Ghana should be learning from. So I see Gabon, and it is funny. It is not Niger, because when I heard about Niger was a little different. I had just been to Niger just about a week or two when I came back from Niger is when the coup happened. So I thank my God I wasn't there when it happened. And it was mostly about the French influence and how they had no control of anything. So even the people themselves who plotted the coup are not too peeved with the current, the president who was ousted. Their problem is the president is not a president of his own, of himself. So he's not able to help them. He's not able to turn things around. He's not able to change anything. They feel that he's a stooge to the previous government and to the French government. And so let's just push you from there and take charge. That is their problem. In Gabon, it is different. We have the MPP today who themselves are peeved. When I was listening to my brother here, I was like, when we were complaining, you didn't know. Now that it has affected you, and I have to applaud him, that despite the fact that he's there, he's really expressing the things that are going wrong. So, Sana, even the NPP today, you would realize so much that within their internal elections, a lot of complaints are coming out as to power being forced to go in a certain direction. It's going to look like a handover, from father to son handover, not biological. But you can see that it is as though the current president feels that it is his mandate to hand over power to somebody. So today, when they are mentioning Baumia, and they are mentioning Akufo-Addo too, as one of the solid supporters of Baumia, and therefore pushing everything for him to become the next flag bearer of NPP. If I'm lying, I stand to be corrected by my brother. You understand? Similar way of trying to hand over power so that you still be in control. So I will just quickly remind Ghanaians that what has happened in Gabon is not far from what is happening in Ghana. And it is these things that has been happening over the years that has caused these people to rebel and to plot a coup and finally succeed in it. And so, who say, when you see that your friend's beard is burning, you fetch water to, you fetch water on standby just in case yours will also be burning. So let's learn a lot of lessons from this and, guide ourselves as a country, not be too happy, and know that people react. People will go mad when they have to. So now, I'll leave this with you this morning.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me do more comments on Facebook. This is Alasan Amdan, who says, raising 2 square meals a day is unattainable. One of the core principles of democracy is economic freedom, but we are experiencing economic radicalism under democratic leaders. If time is not taken, more coups are coming. And there's Okello Benson, who says the same complaint about electoral commission and the nature of election. It doesn't represent the true will of the people here in Uganda too. There's Amofa Felicity, who, he says he's feeling Madam Pa. God bless you for making my day. There's Hilarious, who says ECOWAS is a farce and African Union is powerless. Lengi Chawe Nate says Ghana's election next year will be a litmus test. That will be a fertile ground for an explosion. Trust me, no MPP official will have the time to step out. Hilarious again says, can't you guys see it? Same situation in all French African countries. Togo has a president who is in power for 18 years, and his father before him ruled for almost 40 years. There's a Philastowell who says, cruel politicians' mindset is to capture political power in order to loot ordinary taxpayers' money. Said Ushaibo says, good morning. When parents who live in glass house and seeing their kids play with stones and they say nothing, the day the kids will break the glass house, all of them will end up sleeping outside. So the statesmen and women should come out and speak truth to power before it is too late. Those are some of the messages via Facebook. A big thank you for those messages. Keep them coming. Like I said, keep using the comment section and share a thought on the discussion we are having. Dr. Akofa Segbefia says, my beef with those Western countries is that they are quick to condemn military coups when they happen. My question is, how quick are they to condemn misgovernance? Have they ever condemned the despots who covet their constitutions to perpetuate themselves in power? They should not waste our ears with their democracy sermons. Thank you, Doc. There's Musa Abatwa, who says, Senna, let's be frank with ourselves. In Africa, we don't practice true and proper democracy. We're practicing autocracy because elections in part of Africa is not the true verdict of the people, but how the incumbents can use state apparatus to manipulate the system to their favor. That's why insurgent groups are springing up. That's Musa Abatwa. Keep them comments coming, and thank you very much for sharing those comments with us.
PENDREAM TV now, so far so good. Say open online portal e Ghana. Nipa share, nipa follow, nipa comment here. To my best of knowledge, without any biases, PENDREAM TV.